Dr. Melissa Petersen. She is the founder of the Human Longevity Institute and is redefining what is possible in expanding health and human potential globally. For 20 plus years as a doctor, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, mentor, and thought leader in the integrative health and wellness industry, she's been helping experts and enthusiasts alike optimize their ability to live longer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives. She is also the future host of the Radcast podcast, which is launching sometime in the next month, in a weekish, that we're working very hard in, and she's working very hard in. So please help me welcome Dr. Melissa Petersen.
Yay! Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here. But I wish I was there with you all, but I'm super happy for technology. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, going to bring up a slide deck, and we're going to have a lot of fun together today. And I'm actually going to kind of continue off of what, give me one second, gang. Sorry about that. A little bit off of what Natalie just shared. It's gonna feel like a natural progression. And what I think I do best is I blend the science with the soul, the advanced, breakthroughs with all of the ancient wisdom. And today, what I really want to do is ground us in some key information to connect dots of why any of this matters. I know you guys are all here today because it's the closing of one year, it's the beginning of another. It's our time to come together in community to consider our own limitless potential, what you want more of, what you want less of, and the quality of aliveness that you are ready to continue to express in the new year and beyond. And I think that's one of the things I love about Jim and Joe and the entire crew out there is the word aliveness and that you guys embody it. And so today we're going to talk about the now, near, and new human paradigm through embracing aliveness for radical longevity. And much like Natalie just invited us in to understand things about our DNA, we're going to take an intimate look at our DNA. We're going to connect our body, our mind, and our soul on this journey that we're going to move through together. And I'm breaking it into these three parts because I want to create a bridge. Joe had said to me a couple of months ago, he's like, Melissa, when you come and speak at the event at the new year, you have a really great way of just kind of bringing all the things together. There's so much information out there. How do we make sense of it? How do we choose what's right for us, what we should do, what we shouldn't? Because everybody's doing a smattering of something or another, because you guys are right there at the pinnacle of all the advanced information. That's what, the coalition is all about. So how do we decipher? How do we discern? And how do we create a personalized roadmap for each of you? Well, that's what we're going to do today. So the right now is we're going to kind of pick up where Natalie just left off. We're going to look at these, how to really kind of leverage the current science, the proven, accessible, right now strategies that will already radically improve health span and lifespan. But what I know you all are really excited about is the near future. And we're going to talk about one of our favorite people here at the coalition, which is Dr. Aubrey de Grey. And we're going to talk about his work looking at longevity escape velocity, but actually build a bridge from where we're at now to the next 10 to 12 years from now in the near future, where regenerative treatments and cellular reprogramming are actually democratized and accessible just at mass. And finally, what I really want to invite all of us to do today is to actually spend just a few minutes together understanding, not just hypothesizing, but actually understanding the future is faster than we think. What is the new human paradigm? How can we right now consciously co-create a world that emerges when lifespan is radically increased and human flourishing? It just blossoms in unprecedented ways. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and appreciate that this beautiful journey and this story that we're going to go through and tell together really begins in our DNA. Each of us have our own unique book of life, our genetic code, our recipe that makes you, you, and me. And, I love that Natalie was just talking about Bill Lawrence's work, and he was saying, hey, I think that these small molecules, these amino acids, what they're really doing is they are restoring the DNA. Well, why would that matter so much? Your DNA, you're going to learn, is where it's all at. So, all these therapies, all the future, all the regenerative medicines, it really is all focused on our code. Because you see, our code, we understand, we've kind of been led to believe there's this whole genetics and destiny, but I know I'm in the tribe where you guys get our genes are not our destiny. We do understand that our genetics or our blueprint, and we'll go ahead and talk about that here for a moment. We'll talk about how it's our blueprint of potential, not our destiny. So the real question becomes, well, what is influencing our DNA? There's an amazing amount of studies out there with identical twins, and they can have the exact same code, but they can look different, they can respond different, they can have different health outcomes, they can age faster or slower. Why is that? It's the quality of the signal. The input equals the output. You've all heard the saying garbage in, garbage out. I don't mean to sound crass, but that helps us to get really honest really quickly, right? What's the quality of the inputs that are coming in every moment, every second of our existence? So, as humans, kind of in this world, we live in a container that's referred to scientifically as the exposome. And this container is all of it, all the things. It's the seen and the unseen. It's everything from the foods that we're eating to the electromagnetic frequencies that we don't even know are bouncing all around us. It's the crosstalk in this container between the outer world of our environments and life and the inner world of our physiology, of our cells where our DNA resides. And it's the sum total of our lifetime of exposures. Every moment we are bombarded with inputs, with information. Now, if it's quality information, it's sending in good signals, right? But here's what's really important to know and appreciate, just to be reminded of, is this stuff that seems so technical is actually quite commonsensical. And what do I mean? Our DNA, our code, has to have a way to keep track of things, to be able to pass information on quickly from one generation to the next. And so it's got to have a way to assess what's going on and notate it. Hey, these are the good notes, these are the bad notes. Do more of this, do less of that. We've got to quickly shut this down because this was dangerous. So, in essence, the number one job of the body is to keep us alive. And we're all about that, right? And so it's kind of like, okay, what becomes dangerous to the system? Well, it's these inputs that are either helping to inform our DNA to express our potential or to lock it down, close it up, protect it, and in essence, repress it. Because your DNA is so valuable, we don't want it just opened. Anytime there's a signal that comes in, that signal, that input literally is going to help it to either methylate or acetylate, open or close, open up access to the code so that it can be read, so that it can be replicated, and that things can be repaired or made or rejuvenated. And that's kind of what's always happening. It's always got to be, we're reading the environment, we're reading the code, we're activating it to replicate it, and then we've got to close it back up to protect it. Methylation closes things. But why this is so important when we're really thinking today about why we age and do we have to, I think I missed a little slide here. Sorry about this. Is again genetics versus epigenetics. Genetics is the code that's being read, but it's the quality of the signal. So think of your genetics like the hardware, okay? Your phone, hardware. The epigenetics is the software. Your phone gets updates all the time. It's constantly being updated with new information. It's finding out where the bugs are, it's finding out where the error codes are, and it's a system update to take it up to the next optimal level. So the human system is designed to actually evolve forward, not stay stuck in a stagnant state of breakdown and decay. It's always seeking life, it's always seeking evolution. But it does come down to us in the right now to say, what's the quality of the inputs? Because as Natalie just said, so lots of theories of aging. I want to actually look and say, hey, out of the 12 hallmarks, these are all different expressions, things that we know are happening in the body. But here's something I want to point out to you. Genomic instability is the very first thing. It's the base. And the way that these hallmarks work is that there's the category that are called primary, then antagonistic, and then integrative. Primary means this is the foundation of the house. And if this isn't right, the whole thing is crumbling down. Everything else is basically reacting and responding. We keep the foundation strong. We have less of a trickle down, kind of like, again, that foundation is going to stay stronger longer. Things are less likely to break down quicker. And so, of course, the field of longevity is looking at all these 12 hallmarks. All of the advanced sciences are saying, how can we how can we find solutions for each of these? And so fundamentally, there's that sound, right? If we can come in and systematically address each of these, then we help to slow the rate and pace of aging. That's going to keep us healthier, longer, less rate and risk of all cause mortality and chronic disease. And so while we're all here to talk radical life extension, in the right now, we are still in an era of time that's kind of like, well, we're living longer, but not better. We still got a lot of sickness and disease. What do we do about all of it? Hence, longevity. There's corrective and curative treatments, not just management, which is what it's always been. And we're going to talk a little more about that. But David Sinclair's work, what I really like about what he's done is he says, hey, this is simply a framework. These 12 hallmarks, this is a complex system framework to understand what's happening in the body. It's giving science a field in, a lens in rather. But if we go ahead and just pull out and we go with a macro view, we look at the big picture, this is telling us one story. And he said there's a unified theory of aging that as we chronologically move through life and we have more and more inputs coming in, more and more demands on the system, not enough ability to keep up with the demands. The DNA is constantly trying to be read, replicated, repaired, and rejuvenated more than 100,000 times a day. There's constant inputs coming in wanting this. But if we can't keep up with it, then the breakdown happens faster than the repair and the rejuvenation. And as that begins to occur for a multitude of reasons, the easy answer is stress, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, environmental demands on the system. What it does is a simple way to think about it is it creates noise, creates that inflammaging, that chaos, so to speak. And the way that Sinclair refers to this is like scratches on a CD or a record, that the code, our DNA, our code is still there, pure, but all the scratches have made it hard to access. And this is referred to as epigenetic drift. So there's a drift away from that pure code that's going to give us that clean read, that clean replication, that clean repair. And we start to have more and more noise. And the way that noise is reading, it all of a sudden creates more and more methylation, more and more marks on the DNA because the internal environment is reading all the signals and the inputs as dangerous, overloaded. We can't keep up. It's a threat. So it's closing more and more and more of our DNA down. And we know this through the science and field of longevity. And one of the things that Natalie just talked about is the aging clocks. So we can actually measure the pace of biological aging. And you guys hear a lot about that here at People Unlimited and through the coalition. Well, what these tests are all measuring is methylation and the methylation marks. So the more marks, the more drift, the greater and faster we are breaking down versus repairing and rejuvenating. So in the right now, okay, we need to look at, so we're at this really unique tipping point. So the current paradigm, and this is what we're talking about today, a massive paradigm shift. So stay with me because we're about to cook, okay, is that the current paradigm that we're all living in, even if we want radical life extension and super longevity, we're still living in an environment that is preaching and teaching and sharing resistance, managing symptoms and problems and disease, fighting death. We're fighting against the system, fighting politics, fighting against our neighbors, fighting against whatever. We're resisting, and what we resist persists. Now, why does this matter? The reason is our bodies are always listening. Because when we resist anything, when we fight against something, that actually signals a threat. Even if it's like, I'm fighting for what I believe in, that's exciting, but hear me, it's like nuances of language and how our quality of the input is being read in our system. What does fight connotate? Well, fight to the system is sympathetic dominance, fight or flight. A fight or flight response. Even if I'm up for the good fight, it's the good fight. We put up our dukes, we get ready to go in. This creates a physiological internal response that actually activates and increases the hormones of aging. This is why this matters. We can fight all day long. I just want to help you to have an awareness that the way we've been doing it is actually counterproductive to the very outcomes we want. Okay. So when we get to reframe this and say, instead of resisting and fighting and having all of this cortisol surge, which is dumping glucose, it's dumping insulin, it's activating mTOR pathways, all the fun things that are going to shorten telomeres, drive cellular aging, and it puts us in what is referred to as a catabolic state. It's going to break everything down. I call it the slow drip. Okay. This constant sympathetic fight or flight dominance is the slow drip of constantly breaking us and aging us down. So we need a new vision, do we not? That's what you guys are all about. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure to be there in that physical space with you, to get to listen to Jim, to get to listen to Joe, to get to listen to each of you when you just really stand up and share just the aliveness that is moving through you. And it's very inspiring. And I want to encourage you to bring that to the forefront and hold it in a meaningful way that you can create a personalized roadmap, not just of when you're there with community, but how do you take what you're listening to today, what you're going to engage in over the next several days, and how to actually apply it day over day in a way that's actually aging you in reverse? And it is creating radical life extension by way of more aliveness in the now. We're going to shift from resisting, we're going to align with allowing, and we're going to step into greater states of aliveness by unlocking your potential in the now, near, and new future. So when we understand longevity in the now, it's so sweet. I love having my conversations with Jim. He's like, Melissa, wellness is great, but we're radical longevity, so I don't want more wellness. I'm like, I got you, Jim. I get it. I know it. And also, I'm going to show you some science and some numbers about what we have right now that we might think is poo-poo and we might think is just lifestyle, or we might think it's more of the, one size fits best wellness genre. But what I want you to appreciate is what I'm going to share with you and show you affects your DNA. It's the quality of the signal, it's the quality of the information coming in that's going to either help to express or repress your DNA. And if we really think about the only way we get to radical life extension is if it's an error code, how do we deal with the code? It's the quality of the input. It's the way that we're signaling the code internally. It's also how do we signal the code to slow down breakdown while we're waiting for all these big regenerative breakthroughs to come through in the next 10 to 12 years to meet that longevity escape velocity? How do we actually get there? How do we synthesize all the one size fits most and personalize it to us? Well, it's not about waiting and hoping. Hopium gets us nowhere. You all have actions that you can take right now. And one of the most important places, and I think this is really supported real time always at People Unlimited, is first realizing it's no longer a case of is it or could it or pie in the sky. Like, look, we are aging in reverse. We have breakthrough therapies. Like, it is happening. It's no longer a question of if we're living longer and if we're going to live better. We are. And so step one is to check in. And this is not about judgment, blame, or shame. It's about checking in and being really honest with ourselves. Are we fearing? Are we worrying? Are we resisting? Or are we embracing? Are we allowing? Are we in our core belief of just like such an abundant state of aliveness that we perceive aging not as the enemy, but as saging and the process of more life and more time and more connection? Because one of the most important studies This was done over a 20-year huge analysis by Dr. Becca Levy out of Stanford, is that when you change your mind, you're going to change your actual physiology. What they found is just perception, just what you think about aging, nothing else, not a stem cell treatment, not a bioregulator, not gene therapy, nothing. Just your mindset alone can either add 7.5 quality, healthy, life extending years, or can take away 7.5 quality, life extending years. So I'm going to invite each of you. This is not a judgment. This is something that if on any level, if any part of you feels like aging is the enemy, if any part of you feels like aging is bad, I'm going to invite you to find the goodness, to find the grace, to find the excitement, to find the aliveness, because aging is a process of aliveness. It's just being here today. Now, how we express it, how we express it is optional because of our DNA. But when you change your mind, you literally change your body. Dr. Ellen Langer out of Harvard, hers was the quintessential study. It was called the counterclockwise study. This was done back in 1979. And they found that, again, just by changing the environment, they took these elderly men, and they were in at the time in their later 70s and 80s. They all of them were in walkers, canes, like they were in assisted living. They were very frail. They weren't moving. Early signs of cognitive decline. Them in an environment that looked like it did 20 years earlier, and in just 7 short days. By the end of 7 days, their grip strength improved, their blood markers improved, their blood pressure improved. But here's what was really cool: they were out playing tag football. These men that were in walkers and with canes and barely able to get out of a chair on their own were all out playing tag football in 7 days, simply by changing how they viewed themselves in their environment, new environment. So change our environment, change our mind, change our body, change our body, change our mind. It can automatically give you more years to your life and more aliveness to your years. Now, we all know that movement is medicine. And I think hands down, you know, movement is it. Like if you were saying, Melissa, how do I get to longevity escape velocity? I don't want to do all the things. What's the one thing? I'm going to tell you to move. Get up, get out, move. Elena teaches you guys all about this, right? I know she's going to be presenting some great stuff this weekend. It is as simple as, let me just tell you the simplest thing you can do. And there's massive research on it, to go out for a brisk walk. When you get out and you are walking at about a 4 mile per hour, it's about, you're getting, what is it, 118 steps in a minute, whatever it is, like you're walking per minute. I think it's 118 steps approximately. You can extend, this has been repeated, your health span. That means years without any kind of age. So when we talk about symptoms, disease, sickness, that kind of stuff, gang, that when we all of a sudden are not repairing and replicating at a genetic level, we're not able to keep up with the demands. Things are breaking down. That means we are aging faster. Okay. So when we are not expressing symptoms, disease, taking various medications and things like that, right? When we have less and less of that, that's health span, where we are healthy, free of accelerated aging. We are not aging faster. We are aging at least at the same pace of chronological age and or slower. So that term health span is really important as a way to gauge and measure how our ability to slow that rate and pace of aging. So just brisk walking can give you, thank you, Mariana, I got my timer on, can give you an added 7 to 15 years. 7 to 15 years. 15 years. We only need 10 right now to get to longevity escape velocity. Okay. Here's another one. I'm going to tell you guys, there's a lot of, I'm very, very vocal about this. There's a lot of different diets out there, tons of them. And I'm not here to put down anybody and to say, to make any judgments on anybody's platform. Whatever works for you works for you. But I am going to tell you, because I like to share the science of genetics and epigenetics, that when we look at the human DNA, we are omnivores. And when we look at cellular biology, The cell needs just a very few simple things to actually survive and thrive. It needs complex carbohydrates, it needs essential fatty acids, it needs amino acids that come from proteins, it needs water, it needs light, it needs oxygen. That's what our cells need. So if I were to give you the key to living longer, to slowing down aging, are you eat what's at the end of our fork? Food is actually not about calories. It's about information. Food contains information. So, some of the things when we hear conversations around clearing senescent cells, you've all heard of quercetin and fisetin, right? Senolytics. Well, those are in foods. Those are naturally occurring polyphenols in foods. And so, a lot of the different supplements that everybody's buying, they're derived from food. So, while there's all sorts of different diets, when I understand that we are omnivores and that we need all of our macronutrients in a right amount, to me, the diet and the research that shows that that kind of sums it up the best. I'm not saying it's the best diet, but it's the Mediterranean. And there are research studies out there that we can see it's showing to extend lifespan by upwards of 14 years. So just taking an approach of macro balanced nutrients, clean foods, there's a whole category called epi nutrients. And these are what's on the end of our fork that's either increasing the amount of methylation. Remember, the more we methylate, the more our DNA is closed down, the more we are not reading, the more we're not repairing, the more we're not replicating properly and rejuvenating. So when we think through the lens of epigenetics, when we think about our DNA being the gateway to our limitless possibility expressed, then we get to think about these lifestyle variables in a whole new way. It's not more of the same. It's going, wait a minute, this is all information. All of these activities are talking to my DNA, and your DNA is listening. Now, sleep, I mean, it's the holy grail, but again, because I've only got a few minutes left before I take questions, again, this is going to give us 2 to 5 years just in some of the research as far as I want you to see the numbers. I'm doing this for a reason. Stress. All right. Physical, mental, emotional, chemical, environmental. We all are living in a modern world. You get up, you're above ground, you're dealing with a demand on your system. And we want stress. Stress is actually something that allows the system to thrive and evolve forward. However, when there are too many demands and not enough internal resources to keep up with the demands, then we are breaking down faster than we are repairing and recovering. And so when we think about stress less, when we think about mindfulness, breath work, we think about any of these lovely practices. I do a ton around polyvagal theory and how we activate the parasympathetic system. And there's a lot of ways to do it. Humming, sing. Hopefully, you guys will all be singing this weekend. Sing loud. You will help to move yourself out of stress, pump the brakes into that parasympathetic rest, repair, recover, rejuvenate state. We want to toggle always being in the resist, persist, overload, gotta go, to pumping the brakes and allowing the system to have these micro moments where it can recover because we can only heal. Please hear this. We can only heal, we can only repair when we are in a parasympathetic state. And if our system is always overloaded, physical, mental, emotional, chemical, environmental, from whatever demands are coming in, it can't heal. So if we want to live longer, first we need to repair the things that are breaking down just from living every day. Okay. So we know that this, like, again, we see massive changes to the genome just with some mindfulness and some simple breath work every single day. Power of purpose. Just by having a reason to want to get up and get out of bed is going to give you 7 extra years, okay, to your lifespan. Now, like I said, we just heard all about bioregulators. One of the big studies with Kavanaugh is again, on average, we were really seeing that a massive elongation to telomeres. And again, you heard all about epitalon, epitalon, some of the big research showing 7 years to lifespan, giving us a 20 to 40% increase in lifespan. There's a lot of other things it does, but here's what I want you to see. We're trying to say, Melissa, how do we actually make sense of it all? Well, you heard from Natalie, spermidine hits all 12 of the hallmarks. What supplements should I take? What bioregulators should I take? What activity should I do? Should I do this type of exercise or that type of exercise? Go for a brisk walk, do zone 2. You can talk without being winded. get a good night's sleep, rise in the morning, look at the sun, and just and acknowledge what got you out of bed today. That's your purpose. What's getting you up? What's getting you out? Look for those moments of connection. Look for those moments of joy and gratitude. That's going to give you, that adds up to 42. If we take this cumulatively, we can actually, just through some simple, what we like poo poo as lifestyle, it's actually talking to our DNA in a way that can extend our health span and lifespan up to 42 years. Now, that is what we need to get us to the near future, to get us to the near future where we hit longevity escape velocity. I had the honor of getting to interview Aubrey for the upcoming Radcast, and he's like, Melissa, for a long time, I kind of like, it's out there, it's out there. He goes, we're 10 to 12 years away. Like, we are 10 to 12 years away from absolutely being able, like this, to extend lifespan by to really rejuvenate, create rejuvenation in the system of at least 20 years. 20 years like this. So you're 60, we do these therapies. Now all of a sudden you're 40, even though as far as biologically, right? And he's like, so it's going to be another 20 years. You'll be 80 before you're 60 again. And so this is really important. The whole game has always been, how do we give ourselves that window? Well, I just gave you 42 years worth of a window, and we only need 10 to 12. So once we get here, what's so important is you guys are hearing me tell you it's all in your DNA. Why do we see the biggest therapies with the most research and the most money? They're gene therapies. They're cellular reprogramming. It's everything that's looking at the DNA. I'm not going to go through this from a standpoint of time because I'm at time, but I'm going to kind of stave off some questioning just so I can give you the rest of this. I've got 5 more minutes, so please stay with me because this is what's so important. You all know, I mean, Liz Parrish's work was one of the first, right, early adopters into the space of gene therapy, patient zero with this, and being able to extend those telomeres. But this is what's coming and will be democratized. A lot of these therapies right now are still in the millions. Some we're working to get into the hundreds of thousands, but in another 10 to 12 years, they're going to actually be in a delivery mechanism that can be covered by insurance, that can again be democratized, more accessible to all. So here's what I want you to think about. When all of a sudden we have these regenerative therapies, stem cells, we have gene, we have, oops, let me go back, sorry, cellular reprogramming. And I just have to say this, if you guys don't know Sinclair's work on cellular reprogramming, I'm sure you do, because I know this audience. One of the things I love the most is, again, this is using the Yamanaka factors and to take 3 out of the 4 and to say, how can we revert cells to a more youthful state? That's the whole idea of epigenetic drift. The code is still there. Can we get back to the code? Can we clear that noise because the code is still there? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. They continue to validate this day over day out of their labs in Harvard of what they're finding around cellular reprogramming. To me, this is the most exciting work because we're literally taking the cells back to a more youthful state using these factors that are communicating right back to that primordial code in our cells. So we see the ability to partially reprogram and reset the epigenetic markers. We're clearing away that drift. We're clearing away the overmethylation. We are literally youthing our cells. And so here's what I want you to think about. And this is the thing that I believe, especially with People Unlimited and the coalition, this is what we really need to talk about. This is what we need to get to. What happens? What happens when we actually rejuvenate the system and radically extend lifespan? Because it's not a question of if, we are doing this, but what happens when almost overnight this happens? This is what I want you to think about. This is the new future. Longevity is the paradigm shift. It's no longer about resisting. It's an expression. It's the byproduct of health. It's the byproduct of aliveness. It's understanding that when we live longer, healthier, better, more vital, more connected, more engaged, more alive, do you know that we are actually building a longevity economy versus draining and creating national and global debt? As you guys probably know, this was a big one. When we look at the longevity economy, they were able to extrapolate out that by extending health span by just 1 year, we could add over 38 trillion to the global economy each year. So our national debt each year of just managing sickness is 3.8 trillion. Imagine in 1 year, instead of spending 3.8, generating 3.8 trillion in debt, we infuse 38 trillion into the economy. of gross product, right? And what happens then? So here's what I want you to realize. We are sitting at this tipping point that we're still trying to fight the old fight. We're still trying to be in the old system. We're still just trying to manage symptoms and disease instead of going, no, it's about we are regenerating, we are rejuvenating. It is here. That's no longer the thing we have to fight about and question. It's embracing our aliveness and saying, let's actually reimagine this new future because the opportunities exist in this longevity economy. It's going to call on all of us to look at financial services, healthcare models, urban design, new societal paradigms, work, corporations. People are living longer. They're not retiring from the workforce. They're able to show up. They want to spend their money differently. We get to, if we choose to, create entirely new industries, entirely new business models. You all are at the forefront. This isn't just which supplement do we take to have a little bit more energy today. It's much bigger than that. This is massive. This is the paradigm shift. This is the new human, and you are right there at the epicenter. So I want to invite each of you today as we bring this journey to a close is to meet yourself where you're at in the now, to 10x, to 100x, to dream bigger than you have ever dreamed before without fear or worry or resistance or limitation, because you are limitless potential and it can be expressed, not repressed, by way of your very DNA through your choices of how you engage with your environment, your habits, your actions, your thoughts, your community. The quality of the inputs can express the quality of the output for a healthier, more vital, more alive you. So that from the now, we move into the near and then into the new future. So embrace aliveness today. Let's create that new future tomorrow. I believe that each of you play an incredible role in this new paradigm. It's up to you to choose what, where, how much, how often, how long, in what ways. Because in the now, we have the tools. In the near, we're going to integrate all of this. And in the new paradigm, we are reimagining beginning today what it means to be human, living longer, healthier, and more vibrant and flourishing lives. So I really thank you all. It is an honor and a joy to be here because the future begins with what we do today so that we can thrive together tomorrow. So thank you all so much. Here's some information for my team or for myself over at humanlongevity.institute.com. If you've got questions, you want to email, feel free. You can grab that real quick. And I'm going to go off share. I think I have a few minutes. I've got about 10 minutes. I
Yeah.
get to take questions if you have them.
Sounds great. Thank you, Melissa. Please give her the same hand. All right, so we have time for some questions, and that goes for those of you that are online also. You can send in your questions or raise your hand. Any questions here? Yeah.
Hi, great to see you.
Me
So
too.
I have a bioregulator question since Natalie
Natalie.
Natalie asked who knew about bioregulators. I could raise my hand because you told me about them. So but she said it changes gene expression. Does that I mean, is that in the sense like everything changes gene expression and just like sunlight changes gene expression, or does that like constitute some kind of gene therapy, like a gene therapy dynamic?
Okay, that's a really great question, Joe. So first let's back up and kind of tying in with what I just said. Literally and truly, everything has the potential to, let's say it this way, inform. Everything can inform gene expression, first and foremost. Sunlight, air quality, right? The quality of who you're sitting next to. It's just information coming in. Now, how the system is perceiving and interpreting and its ability to interpret that information will ultimately add up to how it's expressing or repressing. Now, specifically to bioregulators, they are that and more specific because bioregulators, as she said, they're the tiniest of the amino acid complexes. And what's important that we didn't really get into in my presentation or hers is that so when we realize that the DNA, it's protein. Like those little letters that make up you, everything when it's read and it needs to replicate, it all comes by way of amino acids. Amino acids break down from proteins. They're literally, when you hear they're the building block of life, they are truly the building block of everything that happens inside of our human system. And so what happens is that, yes, we have a lot of these in us, and you hear the term, you've probably heard this from Elena, essential amino acids. There are certain foods that we have to take in to get them. So we have these right building blocks to, again, make all the things that need to be made. Inside of the cell, when that DNA is read, right, it's going to signal this protein production, the protein production for the amino acids. Peptides are amino acids that are to 50 amino acids bonded together. Okay. Bioregulators are up to 4. So they're teeny, teeny, tiny. Peptides are also tiny. Peptides, these amino acids, are cell signalers. They sit outside of the cell and they elicit a signal to say, hey, this thing has to happen. So different peptides for different functions, they're naturally occurring in the body. Things need to happen. It's like the radar, right? It's the bat signal right here: repair, fix, do the thing. The bioregulators don't just sit on the cell, they go into the cell. So there is an essence of this that they are in a way like a cell reprogramming. They're not Yamanaka factors. They are these tiny amino acids that are coming in, and they're basically activating the signal inside of the cell. Nothing else is getting in there. They're getting in there, and they're really activating a greater response from these proteins so that it's creating a more it's a tissue specific, it's an organ specific. So bioregulators are specific, peptides are pleiotropic, more general. And so we can get right into tissues and we can turn things on, we can turn things off to say do more, do less. Repair, fix, stop, start. It's kind of a way to think about it. So yes, and does that make sense, Joe?
Yeah, it does. Does it require a prescription?
No, bioregulators do not require a prescription. And that's why, well, I should pull it back, depending on the form that you get it in, right? So some of the intramuscular, so to be able to get like a Pidolon in the sub-Q injection form, and that was what some of the studies were based off of. That is typically something, again, that you're going to get through a prescription or through a research company. But the oral bioregulators she was talking about, you can get, they are readily available and they're actually quite affordable. And there's complete, I think maybe this is a talk we have for another time. There's actually full, based on all of Kavanaugh's work, there's a full 12-month whole body rejuvenation protocol. So when she said how they stack together, like each month, so if we're not treating something, right? So we can come in and treat and get real specific, but then we can also kind of zoom out and do a more proactive of continuing to help to rejuvenate the system with these 12-month protocols that cycle out each month.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's really good.
Yeah, hi, Melissa. Speaking of bioregulators, and I know this was not what you just talked about, but I just remember that, and what you just spoke about the delivery system. I know this was a big topic at your guys' panel in Radfest about the delivery and when to choose what and why, and then the difference efficacy efficacy between some of this delivery system for different of these peptides, these bioregulators. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. So I would say that, first of all, it kind of depends on the comfort level. I think most people are super happy to take an oral form. And the research is really, the original research of Kavanaugh's was based on injection form. The ongoing research of Bill Lawrence is on oral form. So they do all work. Okay. So it's kind of like, yes, they all work. And also, how much can you control? How much can you go in? But here's also something, and I'm going to kind of come in and zoom out. So stay with me for a minute, Mariana. It becomes really important to realize that all of these signaling molecules, so whether we're going to take them in oral, we're going to take them in injection, um, and Natalie helped us to appreciate this. They can only do so much in a system that is already overloaded. And what do I mean by that? They're sending out a signal, but what's the internal state of the environment to read the signal? So this talks about delivery system, meaning are we in a really chronic, severe, we're dealing with some like chronicity. It's been around for a long, long time, super severe. Like when I think as a clinician, I'm like, is it mild, moderate, severe? How long have we had it? What are we dealing with? Where are we at? Where do we want to go? So from a clinical standpoint, when I'm working with patients and clients and I'm using these molecules, it's always for what reason? While you can kind of use them like a supplement, they're not actually a supplement. These are cell signalers and they are used in a rotation and they are intelligently designed molecules. Now, side effect profile is very, like in bioregulators, little to none. Peptides, little to none. Highly safe, highly effective, but it does kind of depend on severity, chronicity, what's the end objective? We might need to go with more of a injection-based delivery method. And when we're looking at injectables, then we're kind of saying, well, where do I get these? Now they're harder to get and you typically need a prescription. So again, if you're dealing with a severe something, you should be working with a practitioner. And they're going to be getting it from a compounding pharmacy. They're going to be getting it from a trusted research pharmacy that they're able to get a pure quality product. And yes, then we get into manufacturing. I don't know how much everybody wants to know about all that. Like we can get real into what's the excipients and all that. And Natalie and I, we talked about certificates of analysis. That's a little, let's first start with, if you got a serious health issue, you should be working with a practitioner with these molecules. Not that they're dangerous, they're not, but so that you actually get a targeted response and result. You don't want to just go online and start willy-nilly ordering. Now, if you're wanting to be more proactive, more preventative, can you go get the bioregulators in the oral form? Absolutely. Can you start to rotate them? Again, we stack them. We usually do anywhere from a 1 to 3 month cycle, depending on what we're looking. She gave you some specific stacks today. So if you wanted to improve eyesight, if you wanted to improve metabolic or cardiovascular health, she gave you a few stacks. Could you go order those in? There's one main company. She showed them to you. That's kind of the best quality. That's what all the research has been done on as far as Nature's Miracle that she was just showing. And again, they are affordable and you can get those in oral form. Um, I think that's a safe place to start for anybody that wants to just kind of dip their toe in to
Yes,
using those.
that sounds great. We got a couple questions online, Nessie? No? Okay, so this one's from Eric. Eric says, Melissa, it seems your comment and slides on the future economy, on the future longevity economy will be a good point of focus for the planned longevity march in Washington. And it comments to this effect.
Yeah, actually, I had you guys, when you get to tune into Radcast, we have some amazing episodes coming out. And Liz Parrish and I were sitting down and we were actually talking about the march and really like kind of in the right now. So there's two sides to this, and which is why I built the bridge today between the now, the near, and the new future. And that new future is the economy. So in the right now, there is a right now initiative of saying, hey, there are these new therapies, right? There's longevity medicine that is available, that's being studied, even peptides, bioregulators, like greater access to these things. And they're still very heavily controlled. They're very cost prohibitive. So there's kind of one side of the march that's like, hey, we want to be able to have more access to not treatments that manage aging and breakdown, but that are actually corrective and curative and can radically extend health span, lifespan, overall super longevity. And then the the one of the things that scares so many people is the like, so like what do we do when that happens? Like there's overpopulation, there's all the things. It's like opposite side of the same coin. Is it overpopulation, or do we get to all of a sudden we get to reinvent how we are utilizing our resources and our lands, and we get to do things cleaner and better and more effectively and more efficiently? So the longevity economy, I believe right now, I was having this conversation the other day. I said, I feel like it's early social media. So if anybody knows Gary Vanderchuk, Gary V, he was a big early adopter going like, you got to get out there and get online and use social media. And that's going to be kind of the online business of the future. And this is when Amazon was really booming and all the big box stores were not wanting to make the leap. And Toys R Us was like this case study he used. And he's like, Toys R Us, they'd closed their doors. They like, that was the toy store. And they started to close their doors all over because they refused to go online. He was an early adopter to a conversation to say, you got to see what's coming. And if you're not willing to see what's coming, you're going to be left behind and you're going to miss a massive opportunity if you're an entrepreneur or innovator or visionary thinker. But you're also going to not have a sustainable model. And that's where we're at with the longevity economy. We have to rethink insurance. We have to rethink healthcare. We have to literally rethink education. We have to rethink corporations. Like we get to, not have to, we get to rethink how we are building communities, right? Like literally not just suburbs and everybody's off on their own. Like how do we get to really consciously architect the next human frontier? So to me, the longevity economy goes across many streams, and I think anybody can dip in, right? Like we can all be innovators when we think through. I think one of the areas that's most exciting to me is architecture, like biophilic designs and regenerative farming. Like how do we farm differently? How do we food differently? You know what I mean? So yeah, anyway, sorry. I'm
I was just
riffing.
gonna say, you spoke about that. Our next ageless session, education in the January Super Longevity Weekend, it's gonna be on architecture by a longevity activist.
That's awesome.
Okay, so we got Joe here.
Hello. Thank you so much. Dr. Melissa Petersen. Great to have you with us.
He's like, wrap her up, get her off.
At least online. Well, there's always so much more to talk about, right?
Always. Thank you guys for having me. I wish everybody the happiest new year.
Yeah, Melissa, thank you. You're phenomenal. You're awesome, and I want you to have the greatest.
Thank you all.
Day. I don't think my mic's on, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
So yeah, okay. Yeah, you look great, and you look alive. So thank you for that. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you, gang. Mwah.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year's.
Bye.